long time.
Hello and welcome to MarketSquare on Veegil Media. As usual, we leave no stone unturned to give you updates on top stories in global business. I am Francis Ogo. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us. Welcome back. In our story today, President Bola Tinubu had recently placed a ban on importation of foreign goods, especially those that can be produced locally in Nigeria. He also placed a caveat on expatriates coming into Nigeria to pick up jobs which local contractors and artisans can undertake. According to the president, unless there is convincing justification for it, including express permission from the Bureau of Public Procurement (BPP), Minister of Information and National Orientation Mohammed Idris had made the disclosure and said the aim is to strengthen Nigeria's domestic economy and promote local content, and approved a sweeping new policy framework tagged the Renewed Hope Nigeria First policy. As much as this move by the presidency may be laudable, there have been reactions from the masses on how workable this would be and the implication on the economy. Joining me via phone call to dissect this topic is a public affairs analyst and a player in the importation business, Francis Chilaka. Thank you for joining me on the show, Mr. Francis.
Good morning, Francis. How are you as well?
I'm very well, sir. Okay, sir, let's look at the topic of discussion today. The president's ban on importation. Now, looking at the fact that you're a major player in the business, so what's the implication on the ban on your kind of business?
Well, basically, it's when we talk about the system, government placing a ban on importation and all of that, every country in the world would want to have things produced in their country. They would want to promote their own products to not only to their citizens, but also to those outside. But unfortunately, we know how the situation in Nigeria is. Are we producing? And if we're producing, what are we producing? These are questions I think the government should have answered first before beginning to impose bans here and there. Yes, I would want to a situation where we say Nigeria first. And Nigeria first means what we produce becomes a standard, not only for Nigeria, for Africa, and to a large extent for the world. But honestly speaking, the cost of production in Nigeria is high. The insecurity in Nigeria is high. Because of these factors, people are not investing. So when you say you are banning items that are being imported into the country and you're not producing, what kind of policy is that? Do you want the people to survive? Do you want businesses to grow? Look, I believe in competition. And I think the government should drive for competition before imposing any ban.
Okay, so we've had cases where domestic producers have lamented that even power supply has scared investors away from the country. Now, if you're saying let's ban importation of foreign goods, do you think some of these bottlenecks within our local space can even allow this see the light of the day?
Like I said earlier, you need to take away the bottlenecks first before you begin to talk about banning, unbanning, or in all of that. The government is placing the cart before the horse, which is totally wrong. I keep asking myself, who are those driving the policies of this government? Good, you want to place a ban on some items, or you want to place a ban on importation. Have you taken care of the immediate needs of those who would sustain that ban that you have planned to do or you are doing? You need to begin to think out of the box. See, it's one thing to wheel out policies, but it's another thing to perfect them and implement them to the letter. Right now, that is one policy that is not going to see the light of day because we are not prepared as a nation. We are not ready. When it comes to production, Nigeria is not yet there. So you don't ban what you're unable to produce, or what you're even producing is not even enough to feed half of your citizens. So if you're talking about energy, we know what's happening with energy now. Even the federal government itself have said that they do not have the capacity to pay the rates of band A. And that's why they're budgeting about 10 billion or so to use solar. So if the federal government, that is the custodian of the financial finances of Nigeria, is unable to pay for electricity because of the high cost, how do you want the ordinary Nigerians, ordinary citizens to survive? The ordinary citizens whose minimum wage is 70,000, now they have been placed under band aid. How do you want them to survive? So sometimes these policies, you ask yourself, are these policies meant to add value to the lives of Nigerians, or is it meant to perpetuate Nigerians in poverty and misery?
Okay, so let's even look at inconsistent policies or policy somersaults. Do you think if this has a political undertone, it won't be overturned maybe when a next president comes in 2027? If this comes into effect, what happens when a next president comes in and reverses this policy?
Well, I believe that governance is continuum, but at the same time, I also believe that it is not static. If a new government comes in, say 2027, and sees that those policies are not workable, they are not to the advantage of the people. Don't forget, leadership is about the people. The success of a government is how healthy, how good, how the people are. It reflects on the life of people. So if a government comes and says, look, taxing the people too much, we're doing this and it's too much on the people, and decides to remove it, yes, it's a welcome development. It's part of growth. It's part of change. It's part of moving forward. So we're not going to say, oh, because the other government did it, and then we know. You look at everything based on merit. So I think that this government has 2 more years plus to be able to look at things critically and decide whether they are for the Nigerian people or for the elite and the political class.
Okay, so let's look at the aspect of the volume of goods currently at the high seas. For example, your terminal, the number of containers that come in daily and out. Is if the ban comes into play, what happens to all of the others that have left the ports and are heading towards our Papa and our Tinkan terminals? What happens to those goods already being shipped into the country?
Well, the thing that will happen at the end of the day is that government would declare those items as prohibited, contraband, and then put a high tariff on them. But I think, like for me, I always say that government should think as if there is no box. If you're going to place a ban on items, you should be able to give those who are into the import business enough time to prepare themselves and get ready. So if you're talking about terminals, the terminals, we all survive from the commands, which is either it's KLT or it is a Tinkan or it's a Papa. Even as it stands now, we don't even understand the policy statement of the customs itself, in terms of relationship between these three commands. I can tell you for free that you know if you're going to move a container from a Papa or Tinkan, for instance, to KLT, most times they don't allow it. They don't even you do all the processes and all of that, and the thing doesn't get to move to KLT. And you keep asking yourself, is KLT a terminal or a command? So there are a lot of policies that even the custom has put in place that does not seem to be working. And they need to sit back and look at them critically to be able to, harness, that relationship they want to enjoy with importers and agents. But regarding items that are already imported into the country, well, I'm sure government will have a way to maybe apply some form of waiver or whatever. But what happens after those ones have been cleared? Where do we go from there? How do we, sustain the ability to feed Nigerians? If you recall, there was a time this government, was it sometime last year, gave a window for um, duty free, people to import food items, grains, and all of that free. There were no duties to be paid. But no, up to today, we have not seen anybody who has done that importation. So a lot. For me, government speaks too much, but little action.
Okay, still talking about the economy, let's look at our devalued naira. Now, if we look at multilateral trade relationships we've built with other countries, do you think this will have a long-term effect on our terms of trade? Because our naira does not, at least cannot compete. So how do you think this would work out with our state of naira, which is devalued?
Well, you and I know what happens to a country's currency once it is devalued. The cost of production goes high, the cost of importation goes high, and you know the things become out of reach to the ordinary people, and then the ordinary people are the ones who suffer the brunt. Yes, those who are doing business with Nigeria would they stand at advantage than the Nigerians themselves, because Nigerian going abroad to buy a goods now, the price of the goods abroad has not changed. What has changed is the fact that getting the foreign currency to use. Let's assume, for instance, that you're buying let's say you're buying a container, 20 feet container, maybe containing, say, batteries, for instance, you know, from China. You know, in the last 5 years, the battery price has not changed. But what has made it more expensive is the fact that the foreign exchange is going up while the naira is collapsing. Today, the naira value is becoming very, very pathetic. We all know that, and the government needs to do something about it. I remember the promises of this government, and I keep asking Nigerians, why are we not holding our leaders accountable? This is the same government that told us that we're going to bring the naira and dollar at par. But what do you have today? The dollar to the naira is about 1,000 plus. So how do you want those who are doing business in this country to survive? And if they decide to increase the prices of their items, the ordinary Nigerians will suffer it. And what is the purchasing power of the ordinary Nigerians? You know that, and I know that. So how do you want a man who is earning 70,000 naira a month to be able to survive in an economy where the exchange rate is so high and the value of the naira has dropped? And that's why you see a lot of Nigerians, they're just moving around, angry, frustrated, poverty ridden and all of that. It's because of some of the bad policies of government.
Okay, so sometimes ago we had a conversation on the challenges you face as domestic operators, especially at between your terminals and the ports. Now, to what extent have you had roundtable with the government on how to ameliorate some of these challenges you have, especially when you talked about the heavy taxation along the pathway, especially in Lagos? Do you think if government does not pay attention to the challenges you have, there's going to be a headway? And okay, let's even go this route. Can you just take us through some of the challenges you have as domestic terminal operators in the country?
You see, the major problem that domestic have is that we there seems to be no synergy between the two mother ports and the KLT, that's critically lighter port. To a large extent, the two mother ports that are meant to feed KLT, for instance, they treat KLT like another terminal. They don't treat it as a command. And that's a big bottleneck that needs to be taken out. Because if you treat KLT, for instance, as a full-blown command, what it means is that when people apply for their containers to be cleared through KLT, a Papa and Tinkan have no right to hold on to it. They have no right to make certain demands on it. What they know is that it is moving from command of the Nigerian customs to another command, and should be accorded the same respect, the same cooperation that exists. But I don't think there's this cooperation. There's this, there's not this coordinated synergy between the three commands. And I believe that is where customs need to wake up, because a lot of people who have their terminals under KLT, they're not finding it easy, because the time the transaction will spend for you to bring your container to KLT The client is paying for demurrage, shipping line, is paying for demurrage um, at the ports. So most times you just, people get so frustrated that they have no option than to go and do the job at the mother ports. So there's this cold war, I call it competition, or in terms of revenue generation between Apapa, Tinkan, and KLT. It shouldn't be so. These are all the same arm of government, customs. So there shouldn't be that competition amongst them. But today you have a big competition. You know, you can see what has happened. Apapa has come out to declare, oh, we have made 1 trillion. Tinka would want to do the same, raise the same bar. Now, for them to do that, it means that they will not allow boxes to get to KLT. So how do you want KLT to survive? And yet you call it a command. So there is something, fundamentally wrong, either in nomenclature or in how it functions. And that is where the CG of customs, he's been doing a very good job with the customs, but that is one area he needs to clear immediately to facilitate trade between the three commands and also between the importers and the agents.
Okay, so we could remember sometimes the private sector always say government doesn't have business in business. Do you think this still holds sway? Looking at what we have at the moment, if this lack of synergy between port operators under the customs, if it continues like this, and there's a likely failure at the end of the day, do you think government should be held responsible on the way forward?
Obviously. The truth is that government has no business doing business. If you check all the um, establishments that government has managed, how well have they managed it? Look at the NMPC, for instance, with the refineries. How well have they managed it? So when we say government has no business in doing business, the business government should focus on is creating the enabling environment for businesses to thrive. But if government gets involved in business and begins to create competition between itself and local companies, then there's a big problem. So the government should focus on policy making, ensuring that we made laws that govern business in this sector and that sector, and that people follow those laws. But until we do that, we also say, let me tell you, we need to decentralize the ports. We need to open up ports in other parts of Nigeria in order to help facilitate trade. We need to open ports. This concentration of ports in Lagos is making it difficult for everybody to breathe. You want to clear something, if you're in Onitsha, you have to clear something, you have to come to Lagos. If you're in Calabar, you
So
have to
what, so
clear
what,
something.
what happens? What happens to the dry seaports in some parts of the country?
Well, define the dry seaports. The dry seaports.
The dry ports. I know there's one in Kano, there's one in Kaduna, and some parts of the country. Are they still functional?
When you say dry ports, it means that those items still come into Lagos, and then they are shipped or they are transferred to those places. But we're saying that, I believe that we can open a port in Calabar. We can dredge
Okay.
the Niger River to give us another port, maybe in Onitsha. So open up this. I don't know why, successive government in Nigeria have failed to look beyond Lagos port. We need to open up more ports so that, it will also reduce the risk of carrying containers from Lagos all the way to Onitsha, all the way to Aba, all the way to Kano. But when you have close by, when you open ports, when you decentralize the port, you'll find out that you will reduce the cost of transportation. You will also create employment. Because these ports, when you open them, they are creating employment. They are bringing development to where they are. So I think government should look at that. It's something that they need to do and do it urgently.
Okay. Now let's look at insecurity. Do you think with the spate of insecurity around the country. At the moment, Borno State is boiling. You go to Lagos, Badagry Expressway, it's unsafe. You go down to Port Harcourt, Aba Expressway, kidnappers everywhere. I'm sure this will scare off investors. What do you think should be the way forward in managing insecurity as it has to do with our investment atmosphere, the ease of doing business, and every other factor of production?
Insecurity, the way it looks like in Nigeria today, seems like something that has come to stay. But then the question is, are we deploying resources and manpower to curb insecurity? The answer is no. You have the Nigerian Mobile Force. People call them the MOPO. Where are they? What do they do? These are people who are paid via taxpayers' money. But what do? You find a lot of mobile police officers. Either they are guarding banks, they are providing security for VIPs, they are providing security for even trucks that are carrying um, minerals that are being shipped out of this country. Is
Or
that
even,
what,
or even pastors.
is that what they should be doing? See, right now we have a problem of insecurity. And what we need right now is to mobilize. The government needs to move every security personnel to those areas that are troubled. Anybody that wants to have security should go to private security companies and get bodyguards to protect them. We can't have a country where taxpayers' money are used to pay, some police officers and all of that, and you see them doing what? You see them carrying bags and escorting people. So I think it is time for government to think as if there's no box. Deploy, take everybody away from the VIPs, deploy them to troubled spots. And then this whole idea of rehabilitating and reintegrating Boko Haram bandits who have been caught, government should stop it. When you do not have a system that punishes people for a crime, the crime will continue to, surface. But if you have a system that punishes crime, a lot of people will not go into crime. So Nigeria, people are feeling like, oh, I can go and join this group, and I come and say I've repented, and they will absorb me back. In other words, nobody's on the bruises.
Thank you for your time, sir. We thank you for joining the program. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
So we've been speaking with Francis Chilaka, a public affairs analyst, a bonded terminal operator, and a businessman. Don't go away. We'll take this break, and when we return, we look at the numbers. Welcome back. And on our numbers, as of today, the 13th of May, the Naira exchanged at 0.0047 to the pound sterling. This is with one British pound exchanging at 2,114 Naira 15 kobo, according to the open exchange rates. When compared to yesterday, the exchange rate increased by 0.12%. Similarly, the cost of the United States dollar today exchanged at 1,601 Naira 73 kobo. This implied a minus 0.06% when compared to the rate yesterday. And the prices of Bitcoin, please check on your screen as we show the prices of various cryptocurrencies across the world. And that's where we call it a day on this episode of Market Square. Until next time, please don't forget to like, share, and comment on all our social media handles. Until next time, enjoy your day. I'm Francis Obo.